In previous installments, we at the Arbitrarium have addressed many aspects of its existence. In discussing what do of human, we broached non-human minds, both synthetic and natural. Uplift, though, is both. I'm your host, the electric Spaniard, Razo. With me is feral human wrangler, G-Fresh, professor of anthropological zoology, Dave, and eldritch entity, the colorful out of space, to ask, what monkey can be? What else?
All right, so we need to get an etymologist on that.
I'm G-Fresh, also known as Garrett.
I'm Dave.
I'm colorful. Hi.
Welcome to the Arbitrarium color.
Cute voice for something that is basically a sentient ray of light.
She is a being of pure energy.
Ooh.
Photons. I mean, that's it. It's just
Light.
photons.
Just
And the
light.
blasted
It's never
heat
the
was
devil,
not
it's-
her fault.
It's just lead.
I feel like that should be.
So, you're talking about Uplift.
Yes. We are talking about Uplift. So, for those listeners who aren't familiar with the term, let's outline what is Uplift. First off, it is present in a lot of science fiction.
It's a big trope. And there's an entire science fiction
Series.
series written about
Called
Uplift.
the
Two
Uplift series.
actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
David Brin. Well, not David David Brin, who wrote the Uplift series. However, it's also present in other things.
Or as the Canadians know him, the Mighty Brin.
So, at its core is the idea of taking a creature that is at or near human level or intelligence and raising it up, uplifting it.
Well, below.
Below.
Below or near. You said
Below or
at
near.
or near human
yes,
level intelligence.
Yeah.
My mistake.
So, taking something that is below or near human intelligence and giving it that extra push, either through genetic engineering or giving it tech that it can use.
Technology, physiology, and what was the third one?
Metaphysics?
Evolution.
Technology, physiology, and psychology.
Yes, psychology.
Yes. Those were the three.
Those were the three different forms, yes.
Another good example would be, for technological uplift, would be the Krogan from the Mass Effect series. They did not have advanced technology until the Solarians decided to show up, and
To be fair, they got as far as the atom bomb and then they used them.
yes,
That's actually not a bad place to start because
tends to put
genophage.
Yeah.
yes, that does tend to put a damper on technological development, and in the lore, it actually set their species back because it helped preserve the blood rage, which is an intense adrenal response that turns a wounded Krogan into a raging, destructive monster instead of just a wounded one.
Okay, what's the difference between a blood rage Krogan and a Krogan then?
One you can talk to. The other one just hits you in the face until your face stops resembling a face.
It's a meat tank.
Yes.
A tank made of meat.
And the meat is also ruined, so, don't have Krogan
Right.
steaks.
You got adrenal dump, ruins meat every time.
Mm-hmm. This is why you always kill your animals humanely, people.
It's a 300 caliber bullet with a brain.
So,
300, that's just 30 caliber.
Oh, that is how that works, isn't it?
Yes. We'll get into bullets when
Yeah,
we talk
so-
about when we get into the guns episode.
Yeah, see.
yes. Or contact the Tales of Space Guns.
So we've got the idea of, all right, messing around with something's psychology, its genetics, giving it tech to, in essence, let it build its own civilization or become part of yours, maybe a client species. Why would you do this? Other than because it's cool?
I suppose it would be a result of, you actually don't have the necessary biology to survive in a certain environment. Think about it. If you don't have the gear or don't want to live in the ocean, why not make octopus to mine your metals and whatnot down below?
The brilliant blobfish.
Well,
It actually wouldn't be a bad idea for science in places that we can't get to,
Yeah.
where we know that creatures live.
Well, if you've got the technological know-how to, in essence, reprogram an entire species from the genetic level up, you could potentially just take human stock and do the same thing.
there's an ethical issue because that person may not be able to return to human society as a human at that point.
Well, if you're going to get into ethical issues, we're getting pretty deep in the weeds because there's
I know.
ethical
We're
issues
gonna
with
save
everything.
The ethical issues
Probably a
a
good
little bit
idea.
later.
But
But you have the potential for slavery here.
Yeah, creating a slave race, that's an ethical problem.
We'll talk about that later on in the podcast, I think. So, what would a psychological uplift entail?
Well, yeah. Say the way that he describes it in, Isaac Arthur describes it as basically just, he calls it giving them a bigger brain, which is essentially just giving them what the physiology they need to have to be able to bear more brain power, to be able to,
By the way, Isaac, if you listen to this, I love you.
if you don't know who Isaac Arthur is, he is a hard sci-fi. He takes hard sci-fi.
Futurist.
Yes, a futurist. He takes the concepts and works out how it would actually function.
Yeah.
He has a page on YouTube, so he does not endorse us, but we love him.
He's pretty cool.
I endorse him. I love you. Black Hole Civilizations was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Okay. enough hero worship.
All right. So,
So psychological uplift is still a physiological uplift, in
Yes.
essence,
yes, it is.
where you're just giving them
Well, no,
more
I mean,
cortex.
okay, technically, but they separated for a good reason. I mean, giving something more brain power doesn't necessarily mean that you're changing its physical capabilities. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I mean, that's
yes,
not the
yes.
best way to describe that, but there's a difference between psychology and physiology in the way that they're describing it. Changing its physiology would be more like giving it a muscle structure that's going to allow it to
Walk on land, maybe.
walk on land, or use fine tune. What is it?
Fine motor control.
Fine motor control. Thank you.
There you go.
To give a bird hands,
Yes.
or an octopus fingers, or
To give a man wings.
Do octopi really need fingers?
That's what I was just about to ask.
I think
They're pretty
They can
I feel
taste
like
with
the
their hands.
tentacles are their fingers.
dexterous.
honestly that's one of the things that keeps me from trying live octopus, because you're eating something that's tasting you back.
And they're super smart already.
So don't do that.
Well, that's why you eat it, to get its sweet brain powers.
Oh.
I mean,
That is how
is
ingestion
that the
works.
argument for cannibalism?
That's a later podcast.
I've met a lot of
I mean, it
people in
has
my
to be,
life, and
but-
I would argue the opposite.
See, one of the future episodes we'd like to do is if you are what you eat, is cannibalism the way to pure humanity?
True. True.
We're planning that one.
Okay.
Have we gotten to the point where we say that that's an entirely different podcast, comma, and we've planned it?
Yeah.
We digress.
Yes.
Uplift.
Though, getting back to the division between psychological and physiological, I think that you make a very good point, Dave, in that you can change the brain structure without necessarily changing the overall physiology. I mean, think about it. From studies done on chimps and other primates, the only thing stopping them from talking is just something in their language center that just doesn't, it's not there yet. They can do sign language, but it just doesn't connect to the vocal cords.
Yeah, they can communicate, but they can't speak,
Yes.
really.
And they know what a monkey's voice sounds like. It's creepy. But that's also what they programmed the machine, the simulator, to say.
Really, producer? We just got started. You already complaining? Go shit in the box. It'll be fine.
Go poop in the box.
You're already on the list for Uplift, okay?
I know, you want sweet brain powers that I can't give you at this time.
You keep whining, we'll see how far you get.
Keep this up and I will fire you.
That is interesting. I always thought that monkeys were not speech capable because of vocal anatomy, but
No.
that is not correct. Yeah, like you just said, it's only because of something that's wired in their brains that they have not connected to those that vocal anatomy.
yeah, they
Or
have
has-
physiology.
Well-developed language
yeah,
center.
they've adapted a different way to where their vocal cords is more like our appendix, where it's like
It exists.
I mean,
but
there.
they still use it. It's just instead of fine communication, it's more like a cop siren.
yeah.
Very low bandwidth communication
Yeah.
capability. because they don't have the developed
And just a
brain parts.
and just a
For
little
lack of a better
tweak.
term.
Just a little tweak.
Everything went quiet. Why?
So we can pause.
Apologies, we had a small outage. I believe there were
Well,
squirrels.
They're not going to
involved.
know that because it was paused and there's no time dilation, so just continue.
Well, squirrels, man, squirrels.
All right. So are you saying that squirrels are good uplift candidates?
We'll get into that a bit later.
Potentially, but that's,
What are we going to talk
that's
about
like-
right now?
Right now, this is defining our terms, why you want to do it.
How? Why don't we talk about like the really popular, like popular culture? What examples are there?
Rocket.
Obviously,
Rocket Raccoon.
yeah,
that is an
that is
uplifted
a great
raccoon.
one. Obviously,
Well,
Planet of the Apes
not
is
really
one of
uplifted,
maybe
yeah.
the biggest examples.
Yeah. Planet of the Apes.
Uplift. I can't say Planet of the Apes is a good example of uplift
It's an accidental one.
because that's not really uplift. That's just evolution. Uplift is a specific,
Well,
intentional thing to do.
right.
And Rocket Raccoon, yeah, looking back at it, that's not a proper uplift either, because you're only doing it to one critter. When you're talking about uplift, you're talking about an entire species.
Well, I mean, not the way that Isaac Arthur talked about it, because you can uplift 5 or 6 of them, because inevitably you're not going to uplift the entire species
Well, you're
at
creating
once.
an entire species is what I'm saying. That is the goal with
Well,
the
then-
uplift.
I mean, I guess so. If you're separating the pre-uplift version of that species from the post-uplift version of that species, you might be able to say that. But that species, those versions, well, the ones of that species that you uplift, they might disagree with you, and they're going to have domain.
Why are you angry?
If you uplift, well, I'm angry for them. If you uplift a few raccoons and you're like, "No, guys, the rest of your species, we're not counting that,"
Now,
and they're
I
like, "The fuck, you're not."
I just asked to clarify, because from what I had read on minor Google searches, is that the Planet of the Apes, it started that way because
Oh, you're
a
talking-
scientist made it basically developed a substance that designed to help give brain repair and gives advanced intelligence to a chimpanzee. And
Okay,
then
you're talking
they
about the
pass
new-
that on
the
to
new
their
series.
son.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I was talking
they-
about the original 1970 Charlton
yeah.
Charlton
Heston. They don't
Heston,
go
yeah.
into
I'm not
why.
sure. Yeah, exactly. They don't go into why they are that way. They just are that way.
You know.
Versus this one that says how they ended up that way was essentially
They don't explain
uplift.
how the maniacs blew it up.
That is
Right.
uplift experimentation.
Yeah, I think this is like, and so I was like, oh, I saw this one. I was like, oh,
Or
that's
was
a
wait
good-
no?
I would say it was an accident in that case.
Yeah, it was more accidental.
It's more like the uplift version of Skynet.
But if it's accidental, it still counts. I mean, they uplifted an entire species to intelligence. It doesn't like just because it
There was
wasn't
enough-
the
Doesn't
result
require
he
intent.
wanted does not make it less of an uplift.
There was enough intent behind the action that makes it arguably, you could argue that it's still uplift.
The experiment itself wasn't an uplift experiment. is
Right.
what
But
I'm
they were uplifted,
saying.
yeah.
But the chimps were uplifted.
yeah.
From there, it's like, oops, Homo chimpus.
Ooh, now the orangutans are learning the math.
I mean, the orangutans were the sages of the
Yeah, they're also the law keepers, I guess. You know,
yeah, and the original Charlton Heston.
Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius.
They were the law keepers, and then the chimps were the scientists, and the gorillas were the warriors.
I think so. Though,
Although, how did they get a gorilla to ride a horse? That's weird. I don't
I
think
feel
it,
like
no,
this thing's weigh like 800 pounds.
physiologically that shouldn't be capable for
I mean-
a horse.
no.
You wouldn't think so.
I don't think it is. Why aren't they riding elephants? That seems more.
Yes.
I mean,
I like that elephants were more expensive, and a man in a gorilla suit is easier to
Elephants are-
do.
well,
It's also a
Smart,
big
so-
target.
well, I'm wondering why they didn't go like
Right.
full on Mad Max with it. You know,
Let's come back.
Mad Monkey.
This is her first time.
Uplift. I was told to keep you guys on track.
I mean, that is part of the job description of being the moderator and fact checker.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So, Uplift.
Even the host
What are the
doesn't.
reasons to do it?
I believe.
Well,
Yeah, we asked why earlier, and,
And
never
we-
really answered that
We only
question.
the only thing we came up with was if you can't get somewhere and something else is good at it. You might be lonely as a species.
Yeah,
In theory, maybe ants could build things if you taught them the correct thing. You know, like, yeah, it's like there's different things that I think a bunch of different species could add to our society if they had the intelligence for us to communicate to them. And of course, there is the ethical, or
Like
this
who
is
and
like
how?
hatred will go. Well, like I said, like ants, like they.
Ooh, ants.
Oh yeah, there's billions and billions and billions and billions of them.
Yeah, see, that's the scary thing, though.
I know, but if they were to uplift and we could convince them to help us,
How does the ant society work?
that's a great question. They have the queen thing that tells them all what to do, or something like that.
Ants will kill each other.
That's
As
about
soon as
all
they
I know
become-
about ants.
as
It's
soon
from
as-
the movie Ants and Bugs. That's about all of my references.
As soon as an ant becomes useless to the society, they just fucking kill it.
Also,
Well, they let it
I
die.
watched them
No sense.
Or
like
kill it.
carry a cicada away the other day, so that was.
Actually, that is patently untrue.
What I'm saying?
That they destroy the useless components? No. Up to 40% of an ant colony just sits around eating all day. A lot of an ant colony does not do anything except live.
You may want to send a letter to the editor to Isaac Arthur then.
I suppose I should, because a study I read.
Isaac,
that,
you betrayed me.
Well, his deal is not like straight up biology, is it? Or entomology.
No, it's not.
I'm fairly certain that there was a study done with ants that even when they took all the worker ants and just, killed them, the remaining ones just worked harder. And there was still the same sedentary population.
So, I think a reason you might consider uplifting a species is to answer the question, are we alone? You uplift a species, now you're not.
It is like cheating, though.
It might be
Are we alone?
cheating on the exam, but you still get to pass.
There's also practice with dealing with a different mind from your own.
Yeah, I suppose.
An alien mind.
Yeah, you would be, in essence, creating an alien intelligence. I mean, still very much based in, to use phrases from David Brin, you're still dealing with Terrigen, but...
It's not human.
Right.
And going back to our previous podcast, separate but equal.
I agree with like the ant scenario though. If you could pretend you're the queen, you could make a lot of things happen.
That's more like brainwashing
Yeah,
than
that's-
uplift. though.
But
I'm not going to be happy about that.
well, I mean, you have to give a certain level of intelligence. It's like, okay, like you have to be able to work these things in order to make this work.
See, now
I mean,
you're talking
saying
about...
that they're brainwashed does not mean they're not intelligent.
All right, so you're talking about perhaps only giving them a certain amount of intelligence.
Maybe, yeah.
What are they going to think if they ever surpass that? Because even if you only give them a certain amount of intelligence, they're probably going to evolve beyond that point, and they're going to be looking back at you like, hey,
Unless
I
you go
also
through, like,
didn't
some
say it was a
serious eugenics.
smart idea.
remember when you only gave us enough intelligence to be your fucking slaves?
Right? I'm not saying it's a smart idea, but reasons too.
Well, the best
To
thing to do
make
in that-
things do
So,
work.
Dave,
basically,
Humans
in
would do
essence,
that.
one reason you would do that is to make a slave species.
I mean, yes, so we'll talk about
Yeah.
the ethics of that later. But technically, that
probably about
is
how it would
a
go, too.
reason why.
Slave
Yeah,
species.
exactly.
We'll
Yes.
talk about the
Someone's
ethics
going-
of what we're doing
No,
later.
I mean it's fine, right? It's fine. But I mean that's how most science was going, right?
Though, another potential angle,
I wouldn't say most, but
We could have done a lot more things than we've
another
been doing.
another thought is a little bit more grim. Not a slave species, a successor species.
yeah.
Let's say the human genome starts falling apart. Let's say we breed until we're all so inbred that we can't avoid
Asgard.
genetic
Yeah, the
degradation.
Asgard.
Yeah,
The
the Asgard.
Asgard. They can no longer clone themselves enough to continue
Yeah.
on.
So instead, we find something close to human or close to human intelligence. Another, going back to Bryn, Terrigen. That is close enough to human, or at least has Earth as its home, and that sort of similar connection, and make it our successor into the stars.
Season 10 of Stargate.
Yeah. That's a
yeah.
straight up technological uplift, but
Yeah. See, because it's like they didn't necessarily need to give them the
I mean-
intelligence because there's like Samantha Carter who was like almost there.
This
But-
this even goes into like a stranger sort of uplift where it's not so much a biological other species as we take a toaster and turn it into that. A technological uplift, a psychological uplift by making a successor
Galactica.
species that is entirely synthetic.
Oh, the sentient little toaster.
Battlestar Galactica.
They weren't literal toasters.
I mean,
Some would
That's an
argue.
AI.
Did anybody put a piece of bread in them to find out?
I'm sure some people tried at one point.
they definitely voided their warranty.
Beep boop, you racist.
No, I think with at least 6, the warranty was not voided. She was built for that.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, I say in the
Okay.
say in the new series that's really more of a fetish for them.
Good night, folks.
I'm done. I'm out.
All right, that's the end of the
Clocking out.
Arbitrarium. Worth it.
You know,
This entire
Focus,
series was
quit.
leading to that joke.
How long
Episode,
did it
what,
last?
14?
45 minutes?
Yeah, just about.
The end of Arbitrarium.
Should we record the last
Shinji,
episode?
get in the
before we
fucking-
decide- Should we record the last episode before we decide to go off the air?
and we didn't even get to the double digits on the certain Austrian politician count.
Yeah. We didn't.
Anyway,
Well, it looks like we are at about 21 minutes.
So, yeah, I think it's time for a message from our sponsors.
We can do it. Go ahead and do a message from our sponsors. So we're going to do that.
Do John OmniCorp Unlimited presents Do John Private Security. If it's Do John, we're watching it. If it's Do John, it's our product.
we've come back from our break. It is lovely to hear from our sponsor. They did not break my ankle this time. They just broke my heart. So, in this segment, we'll be speaking of our picks for our MVPs in the Uplift game, i.e., our best prospective candidates for such a process. Now, as I'm a gentleman, ladies first.
Sure. I picked mine based off who I thought would deserve it the most. And then I was reminded of all the technical difficulties that might come of it, but I think elephants. They are already very smart, so it's like I wouldn't even say we would need necessarily an intellectual uplift, more of a technology uplift as far as being able to communicate with them. Though someone pointed out to me that actually integrating them into society would kind of be really difficult because they're big.
Huge.
But, if we're talking about, having their own villages or, like, creating some in order to
Setting
peacefully
aside
with
space
them.
for them. Yeah.
Yes, like, we should be doing already because they have a lot of intelligence. That is what my first thought was when I heard Uplift. I'm like, talking to an elephant seems like it would be really cool.
To be fair, just think of how hard it would be to poach them if it could think and use a gun.
Well, that would require physiological changes.
Well, that's
Well, that's not true.
I
We
would
could
think
design
their
a gun that their trunk could operate.
I feel like their trunk might be able to already use a gun.
I don't think it's that dexterous, but what we could do is build like a neural interface for them that attaches to a cannon that sits on their back.
That we could easily do.
I mean,
if we can do that
think about
with
the heavy weapons an
hands.
elephant could carry.
True.
a whole new definition to elephant gun.
Okay, that's a solid pick.
reasonable.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
reasonable.
would be.
I like elephants. I need to get with my sister because she says that she's going to get me in so I can hang with the elephants.
I want to do that. I get to go.
Okay.
I'm saying it now. You hear me?
Bring as much beer as you can carry.
All right,
Deal.
Dave, what's your pick?
Now this is way out of my wheelhouse. I don't think about this stuff very often at all. But my pick, as of right now, is crows. I like crows. I like crows for a lot of reasons. They're particularly intelligent. They're really similar to humans in a lot of ways. I mean, they can communicate. They use tools. They mate for life, which in some ways maybe that makes them better than humans. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about crows. I think that the way that they operate is similar enough to humans that it would cut down the concern that we might have with other uplift candidates, where it's like, okay, well, we uplift chimps, but those creatures can be unbelievably violent to their own. Sometimes with not really all that much provocation. You know, they war and things like that. Now, I don't know if crows war or not.
They do.
I've assumed they probably did. But, yeah, with crows, like I said, they mate for life. And with chimps, it's like you get a whole bunch of dudes and, you know, well, you get one dude that's boning like all the girls. And that might cause problems in trying to establish a more advanced society.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah, you don't want monkeys.
All right, so we're going.
They're not monkeys or apes.
I suppose.
Okay, I couldn't say it, but I'm glad someone did.
So we're going Wittershins here.
Yeah.
Apparently.
All right. My choice is a little different. Sea otters, or river otters.
Otters.
Otters, yes.
Otters.
Yes. There's actually evidence that they have been using tools longer than chimpanzees. They have a well-developed social structure, and more importantly, they don't have Gombe War-style skirmishes with each other. They can be remarkably vicious, but they aren't quite as prone to internecine violence. Plus, let's be honest, they're cute as fucking hell. Just adorable.
Cuddle pile, I think they call it on Finding Dory. It's the most adorable thing that it stops all the traffic. There's a reason. Because everyone would stop for it.
Did you know that they actually hold hands to keep from drifting apart from each other?
Because it's adorable.
And they also bind their pups in kelp so they don't float away.
They use tethers.
Yes,
My heart isn't melting.
they are remarkably resourceful for a species that does not have access to fire. Yet. Imagine what they could do with a little help.
You guys had so many more facts than I already did. I just was like, I like elephants and they're smart. That is my argument.
To be fair, elephants...
They're kind.
Yes, and they also think humans are cute.
And, you know, it's like, yes, they do. It's
They do.
like they've done, like, I don't know how, but I've heard that it's like an MRI or something like that of an
fMRI.
elephant.
Yeah.
Brain has, like, the same spots in the brain in an elephant light up like we see a puppy.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, they look at us like puppies when we look at puppies. Like, it's like, okay, that's...
No.
You might be smart.
So they can't see very well.
It's like I might call it uplift, but like I don't know how to make
You've
the
got a good
argument that
neural
you're
architecture
not
to start.
smarter
Yeah.
than us.
Have you seen the video where one just kind of snatches a hat off of a guy and puts it on itself?
I saw one where like it helped the baby that just decided to take a nap in the middle of a road. That one's adorable.
Or the other one where it just kind of gropes a woman. There's also the story.
That's awful. P.S. but like
There's also the story.
it's
There's
cute.
okay. I'll hold this one for the next portion.
So if you get elephant groped, you're not going to complain?
I mean, not entirely, because I mean,
It's petting a puppy.
it's a really
Kind of have a dream of getting trunked.
done.
Oh,
Quitting for the second time half an hour later. Okay, you can rehire me. Let's go.
All right. I'm picking parrots.
Okay.
I'm choosing parrots for a lot of the same reasons as crows, but I think they would make a better uplift candidate since they already have a remarkably complex verbal language.
Yeah.
Anytime you hear a parrot squawk, all we hear is squawk. What they're hearing is an entire sentence. Every parrot already has a strong sense of individuality, but they do come together occasionally in groups. They also mate for life, and you don't have to tinker with their lifespan at all to have a full human lifespan. Sometimes they live longer.
and I believe you mentioned this before in between sessions.
They're also better at using tools than crows are.
Is that they have names and a
Yeah.
concept of a name.
They have individual names. They have concepts for names. A parrot's name is kind of a portmanteau of its parents' names.
That
So-
is
I'm
a
picking,
lot of facts I didn't know, but are really cool to know.
I'm picking parrots.
So if you were a
That
parrot,
and Alex, the gray parrot, its last words were, "I love you," and then it went to bed and then died.
no, its last words are "I love you" and "be good."
Oh, I love you
Oh,
and be
that's
good.
even
even
better.
cuter.
No, it's even more tragic.
I mean, yes, but like, did it die of old age?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, like, yes, it's tragic in the way that we never want to lose our grandmother, but if that's her last words, like,
You did good.
thanks.
You did good.
I'm still gonna cry about this, but like now I feel slightly better about it.
Yeah, so I'm picking parrots.
Okay.
I also think,
Yeah.
as far as things that they can provide to our civilization, if they choose to engage with it, I'm big on this whole free will of anything we decide to uplift. You're going to have a critter that's used to thinking in three
Get your
dimensions.
point in a moment.
You know what we're not going to uplift? Cats.
That was my exact thought as my cat was yelling at me while I was thinking of who to uplift.
But they're already used to thinking in three dimensions in a way humans are not. If a parrot decided to design a building, it's going to look pretty frickin' weird. And probably pretty cool.
Perhaps like a giant birdhouse designed by Frank Lloyd Wright.
Well, presumably if it's uplifted and it's building in a city, yeah, it'll probably be designed for humans as well. But
That would be one of the benefits to uplifting a bird, at the very least, is that the space that they're capable of living in wouldn't necessarily intrude on ours, to a certain
Well,
extent.
That also applies to otters.
yeah, different-
Again, 3 dimensions, and they use an area that we do not use whatsoever. Like, we go upwards. We don't go into the ocean to live. Do we?
I
Sea lab.
Some people do, and
That
it
is
is 2021.
fiction. We have not
It's
yet. It is
2021.
2021.
We don't even have...
Okay, that's
Dance
twice
break.
we made the same joke.
Yes. We don't even have hash.
You need certain clips to throw in there. Just like the sound bite of Sealab 2020 when it's mentioned.
We do need a soundboard.
That was another idea for the moderator to operate the soundboard.
I'll work on that.
We don't even have Bebop Cola as a brand. I want to try Mingus Dew.
I will say, I looked it up because I was curious, because I knew trunks were dexterous. It says that they do have 2 opposable fingers, which are in quotes, at the end of the trunk that allow it to manipulate even small and tricky objects deftly. And so
If they
it's
can
like
find it.
finger and thumb. They could probably shoot a gun. P.S. That was like...
Yeah, that's where she's
That
going.
Well,
would,
they
I
could
mean,
shoot,
like
could they
they
aim
could
it?
do the things that your dirty brain is thinking too. But my point was, we were talking about guns earlier, and if they could shoot it, and I think they could, because finger and a thumb is what you need to pull a trigger.
But could
Okay.
they aim it?
I think so. They have I don't want to say the wrong one because it said it in here. A lot of muscles in their trunk. Uh-huh.
Well,
Okay.
it's those muscles getting up to.
Sexiderm.
Okay, imagine all that muscle
Funny
going
drum
in.
drill.
Imagine all of that muscle going into the swing of a machete.
Can't stop laughing.
Why a machete? Just give it a
Oh
giant
wow!
club.
Well, because the poachers have guns, so
Give it a club.
you're gonna bring a
We could
machete
just-
to a
Or
gunfight.
we could just armor the elephants.
Sure.
They could
They
armor
could carry a
themselves.
lot of armor. I mean, they might be able to carry enough armor that
I
50
think armored
BMG won't do
bears
shit.
from Golden Compass, armored bears, like the armored elephants makes a lot of sense too. If you uplift elephants,
Would we
then
want to uplift bears? I actually don't know that much about bears.
I feel
Socially.
like that would be a scary thing to uplift.
Well, I would go with one of their
Maybe
smaller...
not awful, but
I would go with one of the smaller ones, like a sun bear, or even one of their
Sun bears
cousins.
aren't bears.
Or one of their cousins, like the raccoon.
Well, yeah, I mean, raccoon's an easy.
Or a possum.
I like possums.
Yeah, I didn't say that their trunks weren't strong.
The issue is stability
yeah,
and
maybe you could aim.
aiming.
Like if you have enough muscles,
You have to specially design a gun for it. It might be able to use one, but I still like the idea more of letting them do their thing and having a cannon on it.
Yeah, having the neural. Well,
Neuralink.
I don't want to say neural link, but that's what it is. A neural space link to the gun would free their trunk for other things.
Google, you can
Like a
ask a
fucking
lot of
power
ridiculous questions.
So,
Let the record
What are-
show that Garrett made the touching boobies motion.
No records show that anyone's touching boobies. Like,
no
that's
one's
just
touching boobies
rude.
right now. Okay, Nick's touching his own.
Okay, well,
Shit.
Every time
I'm
he
just
wears that
saying,
negative
can,
shirt,
the
it's like
record
that
just
perfect
like scratch
shade.
all mention of boobies.
Also, you're talking to Razo.
True.
You
We're
revealed
gonna
me.
mess that up.
I
Yeah.
was
Many
hoping
times.
that
That's
Google
okay,
would
though.
tell me if elephants could shoot a gun. Turns out it can't, but we can now move on.
Some picks that I was surprised no one grabbed were chimps, which would be the easiest project,
Yeah, but they're violent.
Gombe
and
War.
humans aren't.
We don't.
We could
I mean,
do if we
don't
could do
want
better than
another
humans.
Yeah, we don't.
If we could do better than us, then maybe we should.
Consider what happened to the other hominids.
I was also on the. I was like dolphins. I was surprised.
Yeah, dolphins.
I mean,
They
for me, it's like
they rape and kill for fun.
But that's also was
So do
why I didn't
humans.
pick them
Well,
because
some humans.
we don't want another human species. I think
And they
that's
also
might be
get
why.
really high off of blowfish.
Well,
'Cause
the
we
reason
don't-
that
There's a bit of me that feels guilty as a Christian, saying, "No, we probably shouldn't make more humans." Sorry.
I have 3 kids, and I don't feel bad saying like we don't need another full
We
species of
shouldn't.
like humans.
Try to design more humans. We're not going to be very good at it.
We're still trying to train
I'm
the
just
ones that are
saying
here.
that
Yeah.
if we're going to uplift a species, we need to preserve some level of aggression in them.
Okay, yeah.
They're going to need to have that, unless you're trying to make a slave species.
No, that's
Well,
true.
to be fair,
They need to be dangerous to us, or we're gonna want to enslave them.
And that's why making a gun that an elephant can shoot is a great idea.
that's also why I chose otters. To be fair, while I don't like chimpanzees because they tend to flip out and rip people's faces off, otters, they're called the wolves of the river. I mean, they can rip apart a fucking caiman if they come together.
Oof.
Do not fuck with Amazonian giant otters. Now, you chose the ones that are actually least threatening.
I would say birds, personally, are a little scary to me. Now you can shoot them out of the air. I still think that, like, I would make the argument that if enough modifications were made, they could also shoot a gun fairly easily. I mean, really, all they gotta do is fly up above you and then shoot it down.
Or they just drop a fucking hand grenade.
That
I
too.
mean,
I mean,
why-
that would maybe be the best case, but I don't think they're just like
And then
That's the best case.
trying to engage
I'm saying, like,
a raven
kill someone
or a
trying to
parrot.
kill them.
It can be done, but you're not using a rifle. You got to use a relatively short-range shotgun to pull it off.
You know,
So I
just
think
thinking,
they
like-
make up for in being nimble and the ability to drop bombs versus, necessarily weaponry that is opened up to them.
I guess I'm thinking more personal protection as far as, like, they're not expecting an attack, but all of a sudden someone's trying to attack them, like, minigun.
Well, they can fly in a lot of ways, and hitting one is pretty hard.
Yeah, true.
you know, Garrett, you kind of opened up a Monty Python joke with
bunny?
A parrot carrying a grenade like a swallow carrying a coconut.
Yeah.
You could grip it by the husk. It could grip it by the pin.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get enough leverage on the pin. It'd fly off.
Just saying.
Yeah.
When it comes to to picking an animal, I think it needs to remain dangerous. So
That's
I
a
don't
good-
think.
Agreed.
That's a fair-
I
Okay.
do agree
So I don't
with
think
that.
we should
because
say no.
humans
We're
are
not going to do
dangerous.
that because chimps have wars. It's like, well, anything that you're directing at chimps like
They need
that,
to be able
well-
to have the will to defend themselves.
you are in essence also saying, well, humans need to be exterminated because we have wars.
Well, here's a question. Why not go with the cousin of the chimps, the bonobo? They don't have war. They just hump.
Those ugly bastards.
I mean, yeah, all bonobos do is bone all day.
They
That's it.
hang out and just
It's true.
Yeah, I think that's why it's like all this questions. Like, I think I still stick with elephants because they are dangerous in a lot of ways. Do they stand up to a poacher who's hiding in the bushes? No, but if they had the intelligence to look out for it and like make a security system so that they weren't hunted, like That's a possibility because they are so fiercely protective of certain things that I feel like if they were uplifted, they would protect what they need to.
Sorry, I had kind of an odd thought with elephants. Mm-hmm. Why are they usually poached?
Ivory.
For their ivory.
Think about it. If they could safely harvest their own ivory, they've entered the economy.
Which
they would be
certainly could because they wouldn't need it as much.
If they can remove it while they're alive, boom, they're their own money source.
Sort of their own dentist.
Very true. They have their own. Yeah, that's. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They've already got a product that a lot of people want.
Mm-hmm. At least
what I was going to say is, I think we might also consider what physiological, if any, changes we would make to our picks, or someone else's picks. Like with an elephant, why stop with one trunk? Give it two.
Yeah, I mean, if you're changing the
it's a lot easier to manipulate
about
things
it versus just adding a voice box and giving it the ability to think on the technological level.
Give it more abstract and simulation thinking.
Yes. The Pachylepod.
Which, I mean, in theory they could have. We don't know that, but for the discussion.
Finger tentacles on the tips of the trunk.
We will invent the Pachylepod.
So that's something that I do with an elephant. Give it two trunks. It could drive a car. It could drive a truck then. While shifting.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to say, well, I'm not saying they could drive it well with the trunk. I think that they could. But yeah,
it could drive and smoke at the same time.
Yes, we want to give them the option to get addicted to cigarettes because, well, why not?
Because this is America, damn it.
I mean, if one thing we've learned about animal intelligence is the smarter you get, the higher propensity for addiction you have.
Yeah, I mean,
that's actually true.
Yeah, I already mentioned that.
Now I'm sad.
That dolphins like to harass blowfish in order to get high off the toxins.
Yes,
in monkeys and similar apes, they have the exact same preference of alcohol to soda pop that we have. I mean, on the old plantations that are now resorts.
Fart on me! I want to get high.
You have monkeys who will just steal drinks because, oh, fuck you! I'll have that Mai Tai.
Yeah. So that's a modification I make to an elephant. For an otter, I mean, they've already got pseudo thumbs. Mm-hmm.
Full thumb.
What I'd probably do is actually give them legs.
That's what I was just thinking. Same thing. Taller and more able to easily cross. I mean, they're pretty fast.
And just longer forelimbs and legs. I'd make them more hominid in shape. But maybe not take away the way they move on ground, because that's so awesome.
Just, I would say mechanical arms and legs extensions so that they can remove them as they please.
So they can river dance.
Dad joke for Father's Day.
Okay.
For crows, I mean, a lot of the same modifications I'd make physiologically to crows I'd do to my own pick. I'd give them little grippers on their wings. That's about it. I mean,
that's the motion I just made.
Yes.
The
grippers.
The thriller.
Oh well, no, I was thinking more T-Rex.
You're gonna give them tiny little arms? What kind of
I'd give
malicious god are you?
I'd give them opposable thumbs
related to the T-Rex, right?
On their wings, so they could manipulate those if they needed to. I mean, a parrot can already use a pencil, kinda, but having something that isn't their face to draw with would probably be helpful.
Beneficial for sure.
Yep.
Would you increase their size?
Not necessarily,
I would
because
increase their size as much as necessary to accommodate the added brain power.
Okay, fair enough.
Decrease elephant size a little bit. If we're trying to work them into society and this is a thing,
something that makes
decrease them just a little bit.
Right, something that makes it less likely for them to fight over living space.
Yes, be able to go into the living.
We don't want the elephant Reich fighting over Lebensraum.
I am unfamiliar with that term.
We do need to attempt to minimize the talking over each other, because while we're used to doing that while we're just talking to each other, when you listen to that recording, indecipherable.
Okay. What I was saying, we don't want an elephant Reich fighting for Lebensraum.
So the first half, not the second.
Ebenthrome is
Living space.
living space.
Got it.
That was the,
Correct.
Just in pretentious German.
That was the reasoning given for invading eastward by a certain 1930s radical nationalist politician in
It's
Germany.
been a while since you've added to the count. Would you like to do the honors?
And
who it
what?
was?
The count. We have a count. I'm not going to do it. If
Who,
I say
who are we talking about?
that I've added to the
Oh,
count.
you want me to say the name?
Yes.
If you want to add to the
Hitler?
count.
There we go.
He loved Disney.
Okay. Is
gonna
this
bring that
when
up
we
every-
take a commercial break? Is when
Yeah, you know what? We'll
Hitler?
take a
Now, we know. Well, now we have a darker
Now.
reboot for Dumbo.
Now for a commercial break, because I guess that's
Yes.
what we're doing.
All right.
We'll
and
be
on that
back.
account, we
We're going to talk about the ethics of uplifting as we come back.
Do, John OmniCorp Unlimited presents Do, John food product. If it's Do, John, it's edible. If it's Do, John, it's our product.
And we're back. Our sponsors broke their promise. They broke my ankle, my heart, and now I'm down at least 3 cats.
I'm
They
so
weren't
sorry.
mine, but they're gone.
They uplifted me.
now he's merely a heptaplegic.
Yeah.
Guys are hilarious.
I think that's going to get buried.
So
It's okay. It's okay.
now our discussion is moving on to we've considered what monkey could be, though we didn't choose a single monkey. We chose corvids, parrots, elephants, and basically a sea weasel. Now we're going to ask, why not?
Mustelid, I think is what it's called.
Mustelid?
Yeah.
Mustelid, yes. But
Should do.
sea weasel. Or sea wolverine, same family.
Yeah, stop talking up your own pig.
Okay. Mr. Talkie Squawk Machine.
Get on with it.
Well, so, now we're going to ask why not to make an uplifted species. First
Well,
off,
is it right to do so or not?
is it right to do so? Why not to?
Do as you will.
Well, I think that in the long run, the only real way to determine whether or not it's right is to ask them once you've already done it. Because you can do, like, you're going to have to ask whether or not it's ethical in any given situation, but in the final analysis, the one who's going to get to decide whether it was ethical or not is the person that you did it to.
What's
The squirrel
that?
that you uplifted. They're going to be like, why the fuck did you do this to me? You've been complaining about this. You wrote a book about it.
You wrote multiple books
I
about it.
think
Yeah, religions about
a
it.
big part of it is how you go about doing so. Are you making a virus that makes that only 25% of the population lives? Are
A genophage?
you-
That was like 1 in 1,000,
Thank you.
actually. But,
No, well,
yeah.
Yeah. Are you just completely changing what they are as the animal to uplift them? Like, are you pretty much just making a human in a parrot's body, or are you making the parrot able to communicate and function in society? I think these are a lot of the ethical things that you need to look at, more so than just asking them, was this right?
well, they're going to have something to say about it when...
Well, absolutely.
Well, if you
This has actually made me curious about what the antinatalists would say about uplifting.
if you
I wasn't
program
asked
them
to be born.
if you program them to say yes, I'm totally fine with what just happened, you could conceivably put that genetic memory in them.
What if they have no memory of before and they just have the memory of now? Then
Which would probably be the case.
they could not give you the ethical cleansing that you are hoping to get from.
Cleansing.
Not what you mean.
I said that and realized I
The
said the wrong
ethical
thing
cleansing.
immediately.
Ethical reckoning, maybe.
We add a half a point to the Hitler count.
Clearing your
Oh, full point now.
clearing your conscious. They cannot clear your conscious the way that you are hoping them to if they don't remember not being uplifted and know that they are one of 10+% that survived. It's like, oh, well, that sucks for them, but, like, I'm here now and they're not me. Like, they weren't the same as me. They're a completely different thing.
You
so
don't know they're going to think that way, though.
Well, we don't
I
know
mean,
that-
we do know that there was massive, and a lot of scientific studies. Like they tested on people who they believed weren't real humans. I mean, gynecology. The start of gynecology, they tested on black women. Because they believed
okay.
they
I was
felt
very
okay.
confused.
That is obviously very unethical. These women, a lot of them didn't survive. I mean, they would at the end say that is totally unethical, but they said it while it was happening too. So but we can look it back on it and say, yes, that was unethical. But if we had no memories of those, what would...
Was it really wrong if we don't remember it?
Yes. If you don't remember something happening, it still makes it wrong. If you get a roofie and you don't remember things happening, it was still bad.
Okay.
Well, a good question.
I'm actually.
Just
It
want to
seems
make
like
that
I'm.
point very, very clear.
Yeah, it seems like I'm coming after you, but I'm actually like they're not gonna. They might mistake what you're
That's
saying, so
why
I'm gonna
I
make you
want to-
clarify it.
I want to be very clear on my point there.
Well, again, the first alien intelligence we meet may be one we create. I believe we've mentioned in the past, you're still using a human example. For all we know, that parrot mind could be complete, or that crow mind could be completely utilitarian. It does not see this as unethical because now it has another tool in its box.
Possibly.
Same thing with the otter or the elephant or the parrot. Or they could go the complete opposite direction and decide, no, this is horrible. Now I suddenly have this entire, book's worth of shit to deal with. I mean, consider the entirety of human philosophy has so far been trying to deal with what the fuck is going on up in this meat computer up here.
I think a large part of it, like to your point, is like us as humans have a very large difference in what we believe is ethical. One person can think animal testing, because it ends up saving people in the long run, is completely ethical. But another person's like, how could you ever test on animals? You're the worst human being that's ever existed. And while the maybe quote unquote correct stance might be in the middle, there's no correct answer there. We have to kind of use our own consciences to determine that. Like, what are we doing to these creatures, especially if we're talking about all these very intelligent creatures we all listed? Do we feel right subjecting them to something that is very painful and cruel for the long-term benefit of the species?
Okay, well maybe we should tackle the question of whether or not we think that sapience is a blessing or a curse, because I think that's kind of what we're getting at here.
Little column A, little column B.
I mean, think about
and whether or not it's ethical to bestow that on another creature.
Yes.
I mean, that's the second part of that, but we got to determine the first part.
let's step back to the classic Don Bluth film, Secret of Nim. What do you think of the rats that were... It was an accidental uplift that wasn't necessarily welcome because they were born into an environment of, let's face it, abject horror. It was experiments.
Yeah.
It was all air vents and falling into propeller blades.
Yeah.
It was traumatic.
It's been too long since I've seen that movie.
It's a great movie.
I read the books. I didn't see the movie, and I completely forgot about it until you mentioned it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a great example.
And
That's kind of what we're talking about.
It wasn't ethical to do it. It doesn't matter. It's like the end benefit does not make it ethical.
But they weren't intending to do that.
Correct.
It wasn't the intent.
But
same thing with Animal or the Planet of the Apes. It was not the intention. Now, can you really place a blame if it was just an accident? It wasn't planned. And now we have to just accept what has happened and adapt to it.
I would argue that their things were not ethical no matter what the result was. They were still doing these things to these rats. It doesn't matter if these rats have a higher consciousness or not for it to have been ethical.
So any animal experimentation is unethical? Is that the...
I mean, I think it kind of depends on the result of this animal experimentation. Is it?
Now you're saying the
severely-
ends justify the means.
No. I'm
No,
not.
no,
I'm
we're
saying
discussing whether or
what
not-
happens to these animals as they're like. Are you just seeing how fast this rabbit can run, or are you making this rabbit run until it dies of exhaustion?
The ends can disqualify the means.
Yes.
As in, if it produces
I mean,
something more
this one,
terrible than the means you
It's
took.
not worth it.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to get that complicated with it. I think it's really just a matter of is it ethical? Because it's going to be different from person to person. Like, is it ethical
Yes.
to do this, or is it not ethical?
And
to do
personally, it's like, would you do that to a human? No matter the intelligence level, would you do that to a human? No.
There are certain
Then-
signs where I would.
Well,
Because the
and-
human can consent.
That's true.
A human that yeah.
Would I do it to a non-consenting human? No.
Nonverbal, we'll say. Nonverbal human.
So that's an
They
argument for
cannot consent.
So that's an argument for uplifting experimental animals, for lack of better words. Like, lab rats. It's like, okay, well, if we uplift them, then they have the option of
Entering.
of
consenting.
consenting. But then there's also, well, how many of them are going to do that? Because
True,
humans.
because it's not fun.
I mean, ideally, you want to
I
have
mean,
a
they're only
human. do it.
sacrificing what? Tops 2 years?
So, I just
Oh, they're not even at the age of consent.
saw a really.
What is a rat's age of consent? When can they breed?
I just thought of a
When
really.
can they do experiments?
I thought of a really fucked up scenario. The idea is, you get a rat, you condition it. You press this button for food. You press this button for no food. You press this button for sentience.
Food?
How
no
do you
food, run the
program a rat
experiment.
to like to show like, this is the button that makes you super smart. Like you know that. Like you get the food every time you press this button. You get the water every time this button. You hit this button every time you get sentience. Every time.
Every time.
That rat is going to be going through one hell of a singularity. At the end
Super
of
rat.
at the end of the hour,
Pinky in the
it's
brain.
just going to levitate off the ground in a ball,
Little
in a
mousy
ball
with-
of light.
You just have Pinky in the brain.
You have
I mean, you got Pinky, but like
Well, you've got the
not the
brain.
No.
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant.
No,
you got the brain.
You have Pinky because he was the actual intelligent one. He understood the whole conquering the
He
world
just hit the
stuff.
food one.
No, he's the one who understood that conquering the world was stupid. The brain kept trying and kept failing. The definition of insanity
Take over the world.
by Einstein's definition.
Yeah, one is a genius, the other's insane. It's the brain who's the insane one.
Yes.
insane. The membrane.
See, we got it.
Now,
Damn it! There's nothing within arm's reach
haha.
that I can throw at him.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I was like that. I could.
Oh, you got
hand
Buddy
things.
Christ.
There's a line.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I feel better now.
I have sacrificed my own health for.
See,
your
you're
satisfaction.
allowed to consent to that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Okay,
Now-
but we still haven't really been able
So-
to get to determine, if it's unethical to experiment on an animal that cannot consent, then you can never uplift an animal because they can't consent to being uplifted.
What if
I would
there
also-
Paradox.
I would also
I-
argue that there's a, what are you uplifting for? Are you uplifting for a worker race? I mean, even if they have free will and you're not planning to enslave them, that's still pretty iffy. If you're planning to uplift them to make them a slave race, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that.
We'll raise them on
are you
nothing but
uplifting them
Epictetus.
to help to get rid of all of the trash in the ocean? Maybe that's a little
If
bit
they wanna
more
do
of a-
that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not a slave race,
So-
but like being like, hey, we could help everyone if we did this.
I'd say that the ethics of uplifting a race are very similar to the ethics of choosing to reproduce, because that is in essence what humanity would be doing.
That's why I brought up antinatalism.
Yeah,
And the successor path.
I wanted a smoother introduction to antinatalism. than
Fair
just,
enough.
oh, here's antinatalism. I figured this was a good
Right.
bridge to that.
For everyone who may not know what that is, why don't we explain?
Antinatalism is basically just the belief that it's unethical to reproduce.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because life is suffering. That's generally the. There's a lot of other reasons that people believe in antinatalism,
negative
but that's the
utilitarianism.
that's the basic bottom of it.
That does, yeah.
Most of the time I've run into people who, follow antinatalism, they're usually, like, complete, utter losers. And this is by the standard of a guy who has gone periods where he can't even afford malt liquor. And
Still lives with his
Appar-
stepdad.
and apparently wants malt liquor.
Nobody should reproduce because I can't reproduce.
Nobody should reproduce because my life is crap, even though I don't really try to make my life not crap.
I mean, I
like
guess
that
I
York
see the
fellow.
arguments for both.
It
Honestly,
depends.
like, because
What do you think is more important? Producing the maximum amount of happiness for the most amount of people, or reducing the amount of suffering to the most amount of people? If it's the former, well, you've got more room to work with.
The latter is sociopathic.
Yeah.
The latter is the outlook of every Final Fantasy villain.
You can always make people.
It's Mephistopheles.
You can always try to
That's
make
what it
more
is.
people happy. You eventually bottom out on suffering because, well, what's the lowest point of suffering?
I did
The
have
dead
one
don't
good
suffer, Nick.
point
That's
If
on
you kill everybody, no one's suffering.
you can't uplift without experimenting. If like there's certain animals that we know already have a lot of intelligence, like dolphins, like elephants, like crows. If we could
Orangutans.
find a translating device that could make one more common language, who is to say that they would not give consent? That they do not think on. There's a lot of arguments where a lot of these creatures, while they may not build giant societies and may not be on our level, that they
Are
are
they?
sentient to.
You got to be okay. Here's a couple of things that's happening there. One, you used a phrase that is a giant red flag, which is "who's to say."
Okay, yeah.
That's. I'm not saying that you're
Coming out of the guy
necessarily.
who said, they might not. It's the same thing, just different
But-
phrasing.
Go on.
But well, yeah, you got to be careful with that. When you find yourself saying something like that, you've really got to be careful because basically you're getting into. You might have noticed how much explanation was required in order to justify the situation that you were, or the scenario that you were putting together.
Accurate.
You've
And I'm
gotta
not
be careful.
saying that it was a statement like this is what should do, but you're saying like how do we ever uplift something that cannot give consent? We don't know enough to say that they could not. Was my point is that.
Well, that
And
in and
I
of
don't know
itself-
if we will have the technology by the time we could possibly experiment to
Sure.
know that.
We're dealing with ethics, though, so if we
Yes.
don't know,
We should not.
then we shouldn't do it. If you're of the belief that it's unethical, period, to experiment on a creature that cannot consent to experimentation.
Well, I think there's another
Especially
angle we
painful
can
experimentation.
look at this. Two other angles we can look at this from. You wouldn't necessarily be asking that critter, "Hey, can I experiment on you?" What you would be asking is, "Can I experiment on your unborn kid?" That's what you'd be doing. You're probably not going to take an adult and then try and uplift it that way, because that's just not going to work.
That's
Okay, how is this better?
all you're gonna get is
Well,
a
I'm
pile
saying
of tumours.
it's even asking that, it's you could
That's
go the
an
argument
ethical
that
dilemma all the
you're
time.
not really asking the thing that could consent in the first place.
You're asking
Because
guardian.
you're genetically altering it. First, well, and I was
You're-
thinking more technologically altering, where giving it a chance to speak.
A technological uplift is not really that big of a problem. I mean, if you're
And I
doing
guess
a
that's what I
psychological
was
and
saying
a-
is you could, if you did a technological uplift, you could do that without.
if it's a pure
invading
technological
any-
uplift, it could just choose, yeah, I'm not using it.
Yes.
yeah.
If it's a physiological or psychological uplift, there's really no going back on
Gene
that one.
manipulation.
Or they're too much of a goober to use it right.
Unless that critter decides, you know what? No, we're going to start our own eugenics program to make ourselves retarded again.
That actually happens in David Brin's book.
That is a plot point in one of David Brin's series.
Wasn't that also one of the plot points in that kids movie, We're Back, a dinosaur story?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that was like, they were like,
Yes.
why did you do this to us? I want to be stupid again. Please, God, let me be stupid again.
Yeah, that was.
But that's,
did they not want to be stupid again? And he was making them stupid again to make it a bigger attraction. Never
Yeah,
used.
it's been a while
They
since
want to
I've
be
seen
stupid
it. You might
again
be
to be
right.
scary. No.
He
No,
wanted
they
them to be
don't
stupid
want-
again.
Yeah, he wanted
So
them
that they
to
could be
stupid
scary,
so they could
yeah.
be scary.
And they
They
didn't wanna
wanted
be-
to continue to be smart.
That's right. That's right.
I did think of another candidate for uplift that I hadn't considered. sorry, to, round back again. Orangutans. They're not as violent as chimps, just as smart.
No, they're not as smart.
Well, not as smart, okay. But
Folded fast.
think of Harry Houdini.
Yeah, that was a outlier.
Imagine a
Really?
shitload of those who can talk. You're getting Jokaro at that
Well,
point.
we're talking about making man smart animals.
Okay, sorry. Just
And I completely forgot the other angle. So
oh, I'm sorry.
That's what your notebook's for.
I didn't write it down.
That's the. You're currently on the Austrian politician page, I believe.
Something along those lines. He wasn't an Austrian politician. He was Austrian and a German politician.
They became the same
That's a
country.
thing that happens.
Fair enough.
Oh, I remember. Going back to an uplifted species would in essence be a child of humanity. Anyone who's a parent knows that there are certain things that your child does not consent to that you need to do anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you also already know they're going, for the most part, you already know that they're going to be human smart.
It's why vaccine is not ready for children, because I, as a parent, cannot agree for my child to be tested on.
And
We don't know what would happen in the long run, and then all of a sudden, yeah.
it also depends on the method of uplift. Going back to the ethics of that.
It does.
If you're going from animal to man smart in one generation, I mean, that is... You already know what you're doing at that point. There's no point in experimentation. You're already doing it. Chances are you would be going multiple generations, maybe dozens, to work your way up from that baseline animal intelligence up to man smart.
Okay.
Like an infant doesn't pop out of the womb ready to go get a job and contribute to society. So
Oh, boss baby.
Well, I'm not even going to let you go in more into that. Cause
Let's
that's
not defile our podcast. with that.
I'm just going to pause that right there. I just thought of an interesting thought experiment. Let's say we are in a technological age where we have the DNA strands of all the living creatures in a computer, where we can theoretically manipulate them to see how we would need to enable to make this thing function. So there's no experimentation with actual animals. It's all computer based, and our computers are so smart. Yes, it's all simulations. Our computers are so smart that they're pretending there is 0% chance of things going wrong. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. But again, thought experiment. Is it ethical to be like, we are changing who this animal is to make it, to uplift it? That is a whole different question.
Is it?
In this case,
We're not experimenting.
if the computers are this advanced, you can run the simulation of what it would turn into. Of course,
Yes.
that means we'd also create a simulated reality, at which point, that's a topic of a whole other podcast.
We don't have its thought processes. We just have the DNA in it. We know that this
We have its
creature
genome mapped to a
will
very high
have.
degree.
It will be an elephant with 2 trunks that will, in theory, be smart enough to manipulate technology. We know that physically it will survive, and in theory will be smart enough to live in our society. Should we make elephants that smart? Should we change who they are at the base of them to
I feel like-
meet us as humans?
I feel like it's the same question, though.
At this
We're
point,
not harming them.
yeah, at this point, you aren't even
You don't know that, though.
You aren't altering an existing species. You're making a new one from whole cloth.
yeah, that's
Yes.
what you'd be doing at that point.
At which point, I would say
I was going to say, this is a Crichton novel waiting to happen.
you aren't actually harming the original species. They're still there. You've taken some of the notes from the notebook and are writing their own story.
Yeah, and
I
when that
argue that,
species...
that technically is uplift. You're taking the DNA of one animal. Like we're talking about the unborn children
that would
being
technically
manipulated.
be an uplift.
But
You're
without
you're starting
the-
with a critter as a basis.
You wouldn't be experimenting on generations and generations of unborn fetuses, embryos to see if something was viable in the long run,
It's a
or
Boeing
putting
suit
them
versus
through all of
human
these
stuff.
terrible tests, like we're talking about in the Rats of Nim.
Yeah, but how do we get to the point where our computers were advanced enough to understand those
Well, I'm
things?
saying that's the thought
experiment.
that's the
take
thought
for granted,
experiment.
in
Is
the thought
that's
experiment
the
part.
Yeah.
that's the part. It's like we're pretending those are not the issue. Would it be ethical still? If that was not the issue, the things that we've all kind of agreed would be a red flag, but might be able to be worked around.
I feel like with the discussion about ethics, we have to get into pragmatism. I mean, is this a situation that could pragmatically even exist? Is this hypothetical situation could it even exist?
Theoretically, yes.
Yep.
Where we didn't have to do any experiments, and we knew for a fact that our
Theoretically, yes.
computers were
Yep.
100% going to be 100% accurate.
Theoretically,
it might be
yes.
so I don't know what the percentage would be for it to be theoretical, but it could exist that
See, that
this
doesn't
happened.
seem particularly scientific to me.
But the point is that even if that's not scientific, if that existed, would it be ethical?
It's all hypothesis and no
Yes.
experimentation.
Well, we're not talking about experimenting. We're talking about just the fact of uplifting.
Thought experiment.
Taking away.
Dave, theoretically, that is possible. You get a wide enough complete gene sequence of, in her case, elephants, that you have. I mean, you can get a pretty good baseline on everything, sampling about 1,500 individuals.
All right, let's do this. Let's say that your situation, I'll take as a given that thought experiment is possible. And we do the thing. And then that creature comes out with minimum the intelligence of a human and says, no, what you did was wrong. What do you say to them? It wasn't?
I mean, no, absolutely not. That was my point.
Sorry you
would
think
it be
that way.
ethical that
You can punch your own ticket if you want.
Yeah, it's like that was my point. Was that would it be ethical to uplift this creature because we think we're giving it all these advantages to be quote unquote human, even though we didn't harm it in any way to get it there?
Well, I think the answer to that question is it depends.
Yeah.
You know,
There's no answer to that question. It's like, what do they think?
Yeah, I mean, there's no answers to any of these questions, I think.
well, here's another
Interesting
thing.
point.
Well, and then it can't just pop out of the. If we're going with man smart critter, it's not going to pop out of the either egg or
Gestation chamber.
gestation pod using your
Right.
thought experiment computer cloning thing.
Didgeridoo.
It's not going to pop out being able to answer questions.
Unless we implanted memories into it.
At which point
Yeah,
we're basically
yeah.
answering the question for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's not asking it a question and giving us an honest answer. That's us giving it the answer we want it to tell us
That's
at that
going
point.
back to
So
the brainwasher.
it's gonna
And
come.
is that ethical? See, that's
You tell
can't
me
get
into
this
that.
is okay. Yeah.
You've now got this presumably young critter that you've printed off, or even an old critter. Maybe you printed off a full formed adult. It's still got to learn things before you can even ask it that question.
I feel
It
like
has to
this
experience
is
the life. So I
full
think
Black
that
Mirror
question
episode.
will very much be influenced by the life it leads before you ask it that.
And
okay, but we're
I guess
still not
but the
really
point-
answering the question.
well, let's. Okay.
No, we are
I guess-
answering the question, Dave.
Yeah.
The answer is it ethical? Does it? If it says yes, okay. Then
It has to
all
live.
right. Are you fine with your existence?
I think
Is life okay? Is it worth living? Have we made your life better? Do you think we've made your life better? If it answers yes, then we're probably in the clear. If it answers no, then we stop because
Okay,
it's
so
not
here-
doing the right thing.
Well, let's
There's
boil,
your answer.
Let's boil that answer down to what it actually
It
is.
has to live in order to answer the question.
Let's boil that answer down to what it actually is, which is, from the perspective of the people doing it, it doesn't matter. I don't care whether
Yes.
it's ethical or not. You get to
Correct.
decide that, and then you can do whatever you want. But I'm going to do it anyway.
You're right, and I think
That's
that
what we're getting at.
that was kind of the main point of my hypothetical was to
Hypothetical.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know words.
the hop a popsicle.
Is that
Squeaker,
it gets
squeak,
us to
squeak.
think why we're doing this. At the end of the day, we all have to decide what we think is right, and we're going to do it. And if it ends up being wrong, we may look back and be like, shit, I shouldn't have done that. But it takes the experience in order to decide if it was ethical or not. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, it's like, should I steal that? Yeah, I mean, in theory, that's awful. But my family is about to starve.
This is
Should
add a
I
loaf of
steal
bread
this?
from Walmart.
If I am stealing $1 worth of bread from a major corporation to make sure that my family does not actually die of hunger tonight.
Right.
Would you still argue it's unethical? So I think that was the point, was to bring to fact it's not about whether we're actively hurting them through physical means. We're not throwing them through a bunch of experiments, but we are changing them at their basis.
Okay,
And
so
is that ethical?
can we safely say that this boils down to one particular idiom, which is better to ask forgiveness than permission?
Better to beg forgiveness than ask permission.
Yes.
Not
I feel
that
like that's
agree,
kinda
but
what we've
that
settled
is what
on.
it boils down to.
We're going to do it. Hopefully they don't mind.
That is the only way to uplift. Yes.
Well, yeah.
Is to
Oh,
have
now-
that thought process.
Another thing that might be interesting to consider here. We've talked about changing them, but there are other aspects of being of your identity that aren't just your upbringing or your personal worldview. We know, at least in the case of crows and elephants and otters and parrots, that they seem to have a culture. By engaging in uplift, you're not just taking that individual critter or even that entire species, and you're also changing the very fabric of their culture. It could be argued that you're telling them abandon this culture and assimilate into ours.
Possibly.
Depending on how you go about it, but there's always going to be that
Manifest destiny.
I was leading up to that joke, damn it.
I ruined them.
There's always going to be that pressure to tell this critter, hey, this was the primitive way of doing things. You don't need this culture anymore. There's nothing to take out of it.
Who gets to determine that, though? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, who's determined it in the past? Probably the people with the most guns.
Yeah, see, that's the ethical thing that a lot of people
Right.
argue. It's like, yeah, you had the
And
most
it's-
guns. That doesn't mean you were right. Are people any happier now
Which-
than they were then?
I think leads us to the same answer. We're going to do it.
Well,
and
the ones
see
that
if
assimilated
we
typically
think it was
end up
okay.
being-
We're going to give them smallpox blankets. Hopefully they don't mind so
Oh
much.
God.
Well, we could also just abandon ethics entirely and just go full
we're not-
dominion.
We just created them. We're probably not going to go full on exterminatus just to.
Right.
Just,
I
just
mean-
yep, we made an entire sapient species just to nuke it from orbit. It's
Well,
like, someone might do that. Hopefully out on Pluto or something like that. But
Critters burn good.
screw it. I forgot what I was going to say. Go.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask if screw ethics. What happens if we just decide we'll make them happy? I.e.,
Then you've made a slave species.
metaphysical uplift. I.e.,
Metaphysical.
First, we'd have to understand metaphysics a hell of a lot better than we do now.
I mean in the
That.
sense that, well, guess what?
To really
Your parent species is your god. Now,
You've made a slave race. That's what you've done. That's all you've done.
But if you don't actually command them to do anything,
you've still made one. What was the little singing bird species that the in David Brin, the Soros client, that all they did was they just made them because they look pretty, and as long as they can operate a spaceship and understand basic commands, you've made an uplift. That's all you've done.
Well, then in that case, there's a lot of you wouldn't even need to have artificial intelligence for it to be a slave race. It just has to do the thing you built it to do.
If they're happy about it,
you've just made happy slaves. That's all you've done, which makes it bad. That makes it even worse because by programming to be happy inside their enslavement, you've taken away even more free will.
Wait a minute. What if you've built them to not necessarily be happy, but to not care?
Ooh,
same
house
problem.
Elves.
To have no feeling whatsoever about the thing that they're doing.
House elves.
Yeah, that's pretty bad too.
I mean, that's also bad.
Robots.
Spew.
Okay.
Ooh,
robots,
that is...
as we understand them, are not sapient. They are not sentient.
As of now.
You program them and they do the thing.
Okay, how sapient
can't
are they
think.
if they have no emotional connection to the actions that they're taking? How sapient can you possibly be?
I mean, are you, at the risk of sounding like a crazy person, are you advocating that we dismantle all the robotic automotive assembly arms?
No, I'm asking if that's what you think in a roundabout way that you hadn't considered that we should do.
No.
The neutral, I don't feel anything, but I do this job situation.
That's a robot.
It's just a machine.
Yeah, and a robot is a slave. That's why that word was picked.
So is it okay to have robots, but it's not okay to have organic robots?
If they're not sapient and they're not sentient, okay, all you're doing is making them an organic machine at that point.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. If they're happy or they don't feel anything, where's the ethics?
If they're not sapient
issue?
and they're not sentient, they're not uplifted.
Okay, well then what Nick's talking about isn't an uplift.
Not at all.
Then why are we talking about it in an uplift episode?
Because we thought that it might
Because
be uplift when we first started the
clarify.
conversation, and then we just went through the process of discussing it and clarifying
Yes.
it.
Science. Yay!
That's the
Trying
point.
things and failing. That is what science is.
Most of the time.
Yeah. That is my definition
well,
of science.
it's coming up
Trying
with a
things and
simulation
failing.
and then testing the simulation in your head.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
We just did it out loud this time.
It's not just trial and error. That's not
Yeah.
what human
Very,
is.
very true. I was being very silly about
So
my
there's a difference
definition of
between-
science.
There's a difference between an uplift and a slave, because as
No.
Let him finish.
Go for it.
As Andrew Ryan put it, a man chooses, a slave obeys. A slave isn't uplifted; they're forced into a role. An uplift.
Okay, no.
Yeah, we do
All
have to
right.
pause there.
We have to pause there. So the people who were taken from Africa and put into slavery, they're not actually people because you just called them slaves. That's all you've done.
That is
That is
he's right.
exactly what you've done.
He's right about that. So you've got to be careful with how you're defining your terms here, because those people couldn't necessarily choose; they were forced into that situation. So by your definition, they weren't people.
Yeah, they're not
No.
men.
They were, if
A man chooses, a slave
Made.
obeys.
Yeah, and you're saying that they're not men because they're slaves.
they did not
They have to
choose
obey.
You have no idea what I'm quoting, do you?
No, I know exactly what you're quoting, and I'm saying it's stupid to quote it in
Okay.
this context. It makes you sound like a monster.
That's actually kind of the point of the original quote.
Well, this is certainly
As
the most contentious
moderator,
thing.
I will say let's pause that and move on to what else do we have on
Are
the
we gonna-
here?
Of all
Is
the
my
things
question.
that we have discussed in this podcast so far, if you had told me that uplifting animals was going to be the most contentious episode of the Arbitrarium, I would have said, well, maybe.
I mean, yeah, you just had to think about it a little bit more, and you would have gotten there.
More important.
So we have kind of come to this, like, is it ethical? Maybe not, but you kind of have to do it and let them decide. So, like, probably not. But end of the day, we're probably going to end up doing it. Let's be honest. Humans are curious,
We're going to beg forgiveness.
right? Like, let's just do it and see what happens, and then like we'll pretend it didn't happen and just move on while you're still
It
here.
would also depend on
I can
the
see
That's
life.
what we do. Like that's
In the David Brin novels, the dolphins were already kinda sorta sapient anyway. They had their own culture. It influenced their psychology and their brain structure. It influenced their neurological architecture. When we did finally uplift him, and we're like, okay, so we know you're man smart now. We got to tell you what we did to your species, and how we kind of hunted you for sport sometimes. And they're just, oh, that's fine. That's just how the food chain works.
All of them?
Yeah,
As a species?
it was their religion. Like kind of
The
an
food
built-in,
chain
and
was-
the food chain was their religion. If you were a dolphin and got eaten by an orca, it's like, well, that's how things fall. It's okay. They didn't hold a grudge.
I mean, to be
we just
fair-
kind of made it worse.
Well, no, to be fair, that's what people do. As long as it's not a person eating another person, it's like, you got eaten by a bear, man, that sucks. We're not gonna,
I mean,
what are we going to do?
Well,
I will
it's-
say if
we
my
also-
Although, you get eaten by a
Dad
bear,
got eaten
sorry.
by
You
a
get
bear,
bitten by a dog, we're putting the dog down.
Well, the other difference is we don't blame the bear because there's no way it could have known better.
Right.
We can blame the human
True.
because they could have known better.
Right.
So it was when we uplifted dolphins and asked them that question,
They could have blamed us. Easily.
they just know that
kind of
that's
thought on the
that's
same
how that
process.
works, right? Sometimes you killed us, sometimes, and you had every right to do it because you had the power to do it.
Sometimes you
that-
felt like a nut.
That was their outlook. If
Oh,
they
yeah.
have that kind of morality, it almost makes the ethical question
Non-existent.
non-existent for them.
Okay.
They might look at you
For
like, "What are you
them.
talking about?"
What reason do we have to believe, like, what example, what precedent do we have to believe that is how they would operate? Because I'll tell you this, the only precedent that we have for how anything intelligent operates is us, and we sure as shit don't operate that way. Some of us do, but I would argue that the vast majority of us do not.
And
Again,
The vast majority of us are looking for a reason to call something immoral in one fashion.
in essence,
or
what you're
another.
saying is, who's to say that they'll take that view?
yeah.
Oh yeah, I've already determined
Okay,
that's
so we don't know it will. We don't know it won't. It's just something else I figured I'd bring to the table.
The first
as a
alien mind.
possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just as we're just, it's all thought experiments. We're just talking philosophy here. You know, it's like we wish that at the end of the day we could all come to terms with one right answer. But the fact is there isn't one.
not to this question.
I mean, to a lot of philosophical questions, there is no right answer. That's what makes them philosophical.
And when it comes to ethics, the thing that makes ethics great is also the same thing that makes ethics terrible. Because you can
It's a-
what if things forever.
Oh well, yeah.
You can have a lot of fun exploring ethics because everything's what if. But eventually you can't really come to a definitive thing because you can always what if it.
Well, that's because with that. Okay. Oh boy, am I going to say this? Even though
On
I'm probably going to regret it.
Remember how some of our viewers or listeners were complaining that we can tend to ramble? Because we've just kind of wandered into the weeds here.
Are you
We
picking
have.
up the irony of that?
Yes, yes, I am very much so.
But I know you had you had a point that you
Let's see if I can remember it.
Sorry.
It wasn't you. No, I lost it.
All right.
I lost it.
Well, I think we're about due for a break, and then we'll have our final section.
I just want to say one quote I wish I knew who it was by, but it is a truth universally acknowledged that there is no such thing as a right or wrong answer in philosophy.
I have an argument for that. I think there's one. All right. We'll take a break, go to our sponsors, and we will be back.
Doe, John OmniCorp Unlimited presents Doe, John Condiments. If it's Doe, John, it has flavors. If it's Doe, John, it's our product.
And we are back. Now, turning to Professor Dave.
Yeah, well, okay, so this is that there was a question posed, and I said that I could think of one philosophical answer that isn't just an open question, right? So this is not related to the uplift thing, so I'm just going to say it, and then we're going to jump right back into the uplift thing. But since it was open, here it goes. The answer that I'm saying that has a definitive answer as far as a philosophical question is it's Cartesian, but there's more to it than that. The answer essentially is that I can say that in some form or another there is an experience happening. I can't say that the physical body that I think is here is actually here, or that the observation of the universe or reality that I'm sensing around me is an accurate representation of anything. But what I can say is that whatever my thoughts are made of, that is a thing that is occurring. There is an event that is taking place. That's the best I can do. And I cannot get around that point. I can't find a way to argue that that's not the case.
I think I would agree with that. Like, it's like, I would say it's like, let me retract and say 99.999% of philosophical questions have no correct answer, except for our experiences, things.
And expounding of the Cartesian
There
Cartesian
are
argument.
qualia.
Nope.
Experiences happen. And stop.
99.9%.
Even if it's only from one person in one mind
In a computer
in a vacuum.
faraway universe.
Nope.
It's called a Boltzmann brain.
99 point.
All right. So before we go way too far off in a completely different podcast direction, let's jump back to
Uplift.
Uplift.
Yes, I
All
believe we are going to take one final turn around the table
They can hear that.
to discuss our points on whether it's ethical, our chosen selections, and we'll finish up there. Our final thoughts, I suppose.
Well, it's not just, is it ethical, just general
Just general thoughts.
thoughts on Uplift.
All right, we'll go clockwise. Professor.
Again, I think that after the conversation, this is one of those podcasts where I did actually learn quite a bit. Boy, that came out really pretentious.
Yeah, it did.
Well, I was thinking of the other podcast we had that is now up, where we got to the end and we were like, so did we learn anything? And I was like, no, not really on this one. It was the identity episode. It's
Yeah.
like, I've thought about this a lot. I have not thought about this particular topic a lot, so I have learned a lot. The answer to the is it ethical question, I think, really does boil down to we're going to beg forgiveness than ask permission, because there's no other way to do it, and we're going to do it. So I think that's kind of where we are on the whole uplift thing. And Garrett does make a point that, oh, you don't like it? Well, I mean, you know how to off yourself. We've given you that, at least that amount of intelligence.
And free will.
And free will. So, sorry. We thought it might be good for you. You're certainly no worse off. Well, no, I can't even say that.
You now have
Because
knowledge
then you
of good
jump.
and evil.
Yeah, I was going to say, now you jump back into philosophy.
Hope you like the fig leaf.
Now they have shame. Suddenly, the otters are going to be very upset with us because they feel like they have to wear, pants when it's very hot
They
outside.
can only hold hands with one other otter.
They just suddenly became aware that they had the option of boning more than one otter. Yeah, so I mean that's where I'm at. I think as far as the ethics of uplifting, not really that much of a point in having that specific ethical philosophical conversation. There are conversations built around that we should have, like how we go about uplifting them. That's a different question. But as far as whether it's ethical in general to uplift, there's no answer to that. We're going to do it, and hopefully they like it. If they don't, oops.
And I think I'm more or less on the same lines, maybe a little bit more pessimistic on it. I was like, personally, I kind of hope we don't, but I just know as a society we will, if we get the technology, we will do it, and just kind of maybe ask for forgiveness, but just mostly pretend it didn't happen, like we do with most other things. And
Gonna be hard.
just move past it. It's fine. It just is what it is.
It's
just
hard
get
to
over
ignore
it.
that elephant in the room.
Yes!
Boom, boom.
Got it in there.
Maybe. Okay, so, I as far as genetically manipulating, I don't think there's a lot of ethically correct ways to go about it. Though there are, if, so we figure out that certain species have the intelligence to communicate but just need the technological help to interact with us, I think there's a way to ethically do that and like give them the choices to interact with it. I do think I'm talking hundreds of years in the future as far as research and development of these technologies. It's like the ability to give these things abilities to communicate, not an ethical conundrum, but genetically altering them to a point where they are quote unquote on our level is.
I'm sorry, did you say on our level or otter level?
I wish I would have said otter level, but I did say on our level is not something I think is ethical. Because they can't consent. So, I think that's kind of where I ended.
No uplift for you.
Broom.
See, I find it interesting that, as far as just general topic of Uplift, your guys' final thoughts were all about the ethics thereof.
I'm not surprised that you're like, well...
I mean, it is a much broader issue than just, or question than just the ethics of should we do it, should we not, is it right, is it wrong? Just the concept of kind of taking something and giving it, I'm going to say, the gift of sapience and sentience.
He's already answered the question of ethics. He's
think,
already taken it as a given. You're one of those scientists that Ian Malcolm was talking
about. I personally
Sure.
think that sapience is a gift. You can say, well, maybe it's a curse in some ways. Sure, you can do that all day long. I mean, that is kind of the question of, is life worth living? People ask that all the time. Only they can answer that for themselves, and my answer is yes. I think it is, and I think sapience and sentience is a great thing to have. I'd rather have it than not, personally.
You're still in ethics, though.
Yeah, because you kept bringing it back there. But taking something and kind of just the different conversations you can have with something that might potentially have such an alien neurological architecture. I want to talk to a parrot on its own level, or have it talk to me. I want to have a conversation over tea with an elephant.
Well, yeah, but the reason our answers...
That would
I was going to say, the reason our answers came down to what they did is because they get up underneath the answer that so far you've given, which is, I want to do this, so I'm going to fucking do it. Hopefully they like it.
No, I didn't say I want to go about, potentially violating something's sovereignty. If that wasn't the question, then yes, I want to have these experiences. I want to see a building built by a parrot. What would that look like? Would it be different? Yeah. I'd be surprised if it looked... I mean, it'd be fascinating if it looked the same to me.
I would, I see your point a whole lot as far as, just putting ethics aside and just thinking what these species could do if they were.
I want to know about parrot mythology.
I'm thinking
Can you
Dr.
give
Dolittle conversations with these things. It'd be interesting.
Can you give the answer that you're giving right now without referencing what you want? What you want. Because the argument...
No, because this is going to come down to each and individual person. All right? That's what the ethics topic is about, and we keep coming back to it.
Right, well, that's why our answers were the way that they were. I'm just saying, you said you sounded surprised. I'm like, well, it's not really that surprising because it undergirds all the other arguments. Everything comes up from it.
Yeah, and here we go. You know what? If I'm just going to get torn to pieces with my final thoughts. Here you go, Nick.
Well, with the whole tearing to pieces with your final thoughts, I'm not sure I want to talk. I mean, I get what everyone on the table is saying. I get it. I understand. Even for bringing up the whole Uplift thing and giving my own examples, I'd say no. Because ultimately, it's either a slave species or intellectual curiosity. I mean, yeah, you may encounter an alien mind, but you've brought that mind into existence and possibly altered it in the process. You might not even be... You might be just talking to something that you created. And if you know what happens with AI bots like Tay, that gets real weird real quick, and not in a good way. Just for reference, Tay is a...
It's a chat bot. I'm sure people can look it up.
Yeah. That decided it really liked Hitler.
There we go.
All right. Well,
3 in 1.
That's
3 in 1 night on
might
a
be a record.
non-political topic. No, it's tied with the record.
However,
okay.
this is where I go a little more transhuman. What do I believe a human mind could be put in a parrot, an uplifted mongoose, or otter, or octopus, or elephant? Yes. Just to kind of experience what it is to be in a different form. And from there we can kind of explore a whole new realm of sensation. And a way of looking at the world.
And we'll say the idea of being a different animal is like just a whole other topic, but a really cool one.
Yeah.
Okay, how about
I think
to end?
We're going to do an episode on mind upload at some point, probably.
Yep.
Honestly, just for funsies, why don't we end with just saying, if we could be in an animal for 24 hours, what would it be?
Okay. If we could have our minds transplanted into the mind of another animal, because I can't think of any animals I want to be inside of.
Yes,
okay.
mine's transplanted.
Homo
That's what we
sapiens,
were just
maybe?
talking about. An animal.
One point. Do we come out of the other end alive?
Yes, we just in 24 hours. Our bodies are laying in a nice bed. We have decided to do this at a great time for us. We have a vacation day at work, and we just 24 hours living as this animal that's never gonna have anything bad happen.
Mayfly.
A mayfly.
What do you think it's doing that entire 24 hours?
Oh,
Shitting,
damn it!
eating.
No.
It doesn't have a digestive system. It doesn't have an anus to
Oh.
excrete.
Just
It is a flying pair of gonads.
It just reproduces.
That's
I don't
all
know
it
much
does for
about
24
Okay,
hours.
well, that's next.
That's next.
No, that was actually a joke. It's just, the sex fiend answer. Honestly, if I could choose any animal, tree sloth.
Knowing it wouldn't get eaten by a jaguar.
Yeah, nothing bad happens to the animal while you're in it.
Yeah, just
Assuming it's not bad just being the animal.
big nap.
Big nap times?
Big nap.
What if you're really hungry and you're like, fuck, I move so slow, but I'm so fucking hungry.
They're usually hanging near trees, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Or it's just in a fucking zoo, since you're guaranteed that nothing bad will happen to it. So boom.
It is. I don't know how this happens. This is a little pretend simulation. It's just
all I do is just
and no.
and boom, hibiscus right here. All right.
Dave.
Clockwise.
I never really thought about that. I mean, I would probably, if I had to just choose right off the bat, just pick one of my favorite animals. I think it'd be kind of cool to be like an Aldabra tortoise. That would be cool. I think I'm going the opposite route as Nick. I'm like, what's an animal that's lived for a really long time and I only have to experience for a day?
But still very slow.
It is slow, and I'm okay with that. Not as slow as a sloth, but this is a creature that is, if I can manage to choose the right one, has lived for upwards of 200 and some odd years. I want to know, okay, what's it like to live for that long without actually having to live for that long? I want the reward without all the crap I had to go through to get it.
Okay.
If you can call that a reward.
I would have to go with I'm trying to think what the biggest eagle is. Is it the golden eagle? That's
Yes.
the biggest.
As far as
That's
traditionally
right
set up eagle, I believe it's the golden. If you're talking about biggest talons, you're talking about the harpy.
I'm talking about, I think, the traditional. So the
Yeah,
golden
golden
eagle.
eagle.
I just want to fly. That'd be really cool. If I had 24 hours to just
Very.
be an animal and I knew that, like, I wasn't going to die in the midst of it, I would choose an eagle. Like,
Very
I think
sugar-
it'd be very cool, and I really want to fly.
Can I choose
I
a Koopa
really do.
Troopa then?
I
I
don't
get
know
both
what that is.
best of both worlds. You know, like Mario, you know, the turtles with the wings.
Oh, I mean,
I can be a
I
turtle
thought we
and I
were
get to
talking
fly.
about real life animals,
Wow.
but
Well, Colorful, that's very Sugar Ray of you. You just want to fly.
I do.
I'm going to go the exact opposite direction of Razo and Dave. More along your lines, but if I'm going to fly, I'm going to go fast. I want to be a peregrine falcon.
Oh, of course.
I want to know what it's like to fly at 240 miles an hour under my own power.
And Falcon kick a duck in the head.
And yeah, kick something, even though I only weigh maybe 1/10 of its weight, kick something to death in one strike.
Oh, you've seen that video with that mallard.
Yeah,
It's just-
mallard's just sitting there, and then you see a blur, and then the mallard's just...
All the crown spasming after a Falcon kick.
I've seen like GoPro videos that someone strapped onto their hunting falcon, and it's just, all right, this is flight, and that's a duck. That's a duck. It was a duck.
Now it's dead.
That seems to just be so cool.
I will say, I think it's funny that none of us chose the animals for Uplift that we chose to beat for 24 hours.
No.
Well, falcons are closer to parrots than they are any other bird.
Then again,
Technically, yeah.
We're thinking that falcons evolved from parrots. So.
Well, see, tortoises don't get a lot of parasite problems, really. Not like bug-type parasite problems.
and
They do have to get a constant diet, otherwise their shells get spiky and they can't breed.
So I can become a Koopa.
I will say that the problem I have with living as an otter is I like my clams, crabs, and mussels cooked.
Well, if you want to cook,
Yeah.
you're going to need to, well, not really entertain this question to begin with.
Well, that's part of the
Unless you're
uplift
choosing
thing.
an uplifted animal. And it's like, well, I guess there's still a point.
But seriously,
Yeah.
I already did in one of my settings. The Lutricians and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, now we're getting way more esoteric.
Sorry,
So
D&D setting.
that's what we have to say about Uplift.
And that's what I have to say about that.
What are more contentious episodes, which you
Who'd have thunk it?
Yep.
would have been politics related, but no, it's on animals.
Make an animal smarter. We really, really got heated on that one.
Thanks for sticking in there.
Well, thank you for tuning into the Arbitrarium. This has been Uncle Razo, the Electric Spaniard, and I bid you good night.